Welcome to the Unsupported Report. This is a new weekly show by us at Steam Deck HQ where we go over 2 to 3 games that were rated unsupported by Valve to see if those ratings were justified. Last week we went over 3 fantastic games: Starlink Battle for Atlas, Sonic Adventure DX, and Ys Origin, and if you want to check out how those run, you can check out our video and a link is in the description. However, in this episode we've got 3 new games that were rated unsupported by Valve, and we went ahead and tested them to see if those ratings were warranted. And one of those games gave me way more grief than I expected. So join us in this episode as we go over Trinity Trigger, Just Cause 2, and Jump Force to see if those games are actually playable on the Steam Deck or are they really unsupported. And before we get into this, if you want to see more videos like this, hit that like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Let's start off with Trinity Trigger. Now this is the newest of the 3 games that are in this report and one that we actually reviewed. In that review, we listed that the game is pretty much perfect on the Steam Deck. There were no issues with it whatsoever. The controls were recognizing and performance was fantastic. If we're being very nitpicky, some of the in-game text may be a little bit too small, but ultimately it is still very readable. So I was surprised going back and actually seeing that the game is rated unsupported. Now when it comes to the reason behind this rating, it is the cookie cutter response that Valve is working on adding support for the Steam Deck for this game, but I thought it was perfectly fine the way it was when it released. So I wanted to take a look at the game and see if something had changed to give it that unsupported rating. And oddly enough, nothing really has changed. The game is running at 90 frames per second with low battery drain, and there really feels like there's no issues when trying to play it. There isn't really much more that I can say about it either. I mean, it just runs really well, perfectly out of the box. There was nothing extra that I had to do with it, and just, it's a great game to play on the Steam Deck. I also looked at SteamDB's update changelog to see if the game had a better rating and then it changed to unsupported, but it just seems like 3 weeks ago it was given that unsupported rating and that's it. I really wish Valve would give us a little bit more detail as to why they give the unsupported rating a lot of times, because honestly Trinity Trigger is just perfect to play on the Steam Deck and I find the rating completely unwarranted. So I can say with a good amount of confidence that if you want to play Trinity Trigger on the Steam Deck, you shouldn't have any problems. Now we move on to Just Cause 2, which was one of my favorite games I played on PC back in the day. I loved going around the open world and causing as much chaos as I possibly could, and that was all this game was about. Now, I noticed that the game is rated unsupported on the Steam Deck, with Valve's cookie cutter response of needing to add support for the deck. However, reports for this game were all over the place, which I found was weird because I've actually played this on the Steam Deck before. Granted, it was maybe 2 years ago, but I was playing it before. And to my surprise, no, the game was not as playable as I initially thought. As soon as I booted the game, I was met with an updating executable stall when it was loading, and it would just boot right back into game mode without even trying to boot the executable. So ultimately, I wasn't able to actually play the game. Now, when I went to ProtonDB, I saw a multitude of different reports. Some were saying it works right out of the box, some were saying they need a custom DLL or an EXE, some were saying that it works only with Proton GE, and some would say that they would stall on that executable. Now, I tried every single suggestion, even the offhand suggestions that unchecking all of the DLC for the game or even deleting the install script would actually help get the game running. However, I ultimately did get Just Cause 2 running on the Steam Deck, though it did take me a couple of hours and a lot of different methods that I ended up trying. So before I go into exactly what I did and what I think the solutions are, I will say that I tried so many different things that any one of them could have affected this to some degree. So if it doesn't work completely for you, let us know in the comments and we will help you get it working. To the best of our ability, of course. So from my opinion, this is a 2-part problem that we needed to fix. The first was the stalling on the updating executable, and the other was the stalling right after the updating executable, where it would just go to a black screen with the loading circle in the middle. To solve the first problem, we actually had to get a custom EXE. So I had to scour the internet and I found someone who was hosting the EXE on Google Drive. Now, I don't know the person that is hosting this, so I cannot verify the authenticity of this EXE and the safety behind it. For transparency's sake, I will include a link to it in our description, but I advise doing some scans and research of your own before just downloading this random file from the internet. After that, you would just have to go to your local files for Just Cause 2 and replace the EXE there. You can get to it by just right-clicking it in your Steam library, going to Manage, and Browse Local Files. After that's done, you should be able to get past the updating executable stall. However, then we're met with the black loading screen. So to fix this, we're going to have to use Proton Tricks to install a custom DLL. You can get Proton Tricks from the Discover store. All you have to do is go there, search Proton Tricks, and install it. After that, go ahead and launch the application, find Just Cause 2 in the list, and click OK. After that, you're going to click Select the default prefix, then install a Windows DLL. From there, you're going to scroll down a little bit, and you're going to stop when you see D3D Compiler 47. After you find it, all you have to do is check the box next to D3D Compiler 47 and click OK. Then the screen's going to go away for a little bit, and then when it comes back, you can close it off and then go back into game mode. Now you should be able to start the game and play it as is. Just be prepared for a long loading screen when you first launch it. I think I was stuck at that black screen with the loading circle for about 3 minutes before it actually went into the game, but any launch after that should be much quicker. And of course, once you've done this, you shouldn't have to go through this process again to play it on later unless you uninstall the game. So for the love of all, don't uninstall this game. As for performance, there should really be no problems playing Just Cause 2 on the Steam Deck. In my time with it, it was running like a breeze. Whether it was driving around the roads in the forest as fast as I could, or getting into massive combat scenarios, it still held strong. However, I did see some signs where it could drop down in some really big scenarios, with tons of explosions and everything. I also did run into one crash, and I wasn't able to tell exactly what it was. I just ran my bike into a tree as hard as I could, and the game just shut down. I was able to boot back up and into it immediately, but still worth mentioning. So it absolutely deserves the unsupported badge, and it is a little bit finicky when trying to play it. So I would say don't buy this specifically to play on the Steam Deck, but if you do buy it, know that you can tweak it enough to actually make it playable. And finally, we have Jump Force. Now, I love anime fighting games, and I always wanted a game that combined different anime universes into one fighting game. When I was really young, I relied on Mugen to create that experience, but then I discovered the Jump series, specifically Jump Superstars. This was an official game from the Shonen Jump universe that brought together popular anime universes like Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, and One Piece, and put them together in combat. Jump Superstars was released on the DS at the time, but the series has continued, and the newest iteration is Jump Force. However, unfortunately, due to whatever reasons, Jump Force is no longer on Steam, so it cannot be purchased anymore. Yet, it's still rated as unsupported. As a fan of these kinds of games, I wanted to check it out for myself and see if that rating is warranted. Now, Jump Force is rated unsupported because the anti-cheat doesn't support the Steam Deck, and that is clear as day when trying to launch the game without any changes. It will ultimately just pop up an error and then immediately close the game, and that's it. So yes, that unsupported rating is definitely warranted. However, we can get around it and still play it on the Steam Deck. If you force the Proton GE compatibility layer, whether it's Proton GE 10-26 or 27, can be one of the newest ones, it should ultimately just launch the game. No more error, no more issues, you should be able to just get right in and play. Now, the game has been discontinued, so there are no more online modes that can be used with this game, so anti-cheat never really becomes an actual issue anymore. As for the performance, it defaults to the high graphics settings, which it handles pretty well. It sticks to 60 frames per second for the most part, with some minor dips to the 57 frames per second range when in combat. There are still some bigger attacks like Goku's Super Spirit Bomb that can bring the frame rate down below 50 frames per second. However, by bringing shadows and anti-aliasing to medium, this can be completely avoided. There will still be some dips, which can be almost completely eliminated if you set everything to low. However, it makes the game look much worse. Even with these small dips to the 57 frame per second range, it's still very playable, and really I didn't notice it unless I was watching the frame rate bar. Now, if you're curious if you can download your old copy of Jump Force and play in local multiplayer with some friends or using remote play, I would say using the Steam Deck is pretty good. However, as I said before, the game has ceased all online functions, so you can't even play online even on a normal desktop PC. So, for what features are already in the game and what's still working, I would consider this playable. But because it needs that custom Proton layer to actually run, it does deserve that unsupported badge. And that's all for this episode. I was really surprised how much grief Just Cause 2 gave me, and while I am glad that it was able to play in the end, there were still a good chunk of problems like that first time loading and that crash, which makes me think twice about really playing it on the Steam Deck. Still, at least Trinity Trigger and Jump Force are playable, even though the latter doesn't have online support anymore. So ultimately, this was a good test to see if these games are playable and whether they're enjoyable on the Steam Deck or not. And while all of them are, I would say Just Cause 2 might give you a little bit of pause. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. And a huge thank you to our patrons. You guys are awesome. See you next week.